get started tonight with our mystery guest, Captain Kinetic, as he is called. Kevin Summerbang is actually the founder of a company that is doing some amazing things. And when you look at the content that they are creating, it is just like head and shoulders above anything I've ever seen. And here's the thing that I'll share with you. There are way too many people out there that are trying to raise money, whether it's for single family, multifamily, storage, it really doesn't matter. And it all starts, of course, with a great presentation. Like, how are you going to stand out and stand above the crowd? And the answer largely is in something that I've preached to the choir on many times, and it's branding. You've got to create an identity and a brand, because that actually is what's going to separate you from everybody else. And the thing that I love about Kevin and what his company Kinetic Slide stands for is most people use PowerPoint or use one of the other platforms to create a presentation. What Kevin does is he uses it to create results and revenue, generating materials for business owners, for people that are raising money, whether it's your flyers, your offering memorandums, your company profile, your pitch deck, the business card, the logo, proposal documents, videos, anything that you need, this guy and his team can create. So, Kevin, I want to welcome you to Capital School's Accountability Call.
Thanks, Brad. It's great to be here, meeting all these relentless individuals who wanted to know more about capital raising. It's my honor. So thank you so much.
So what I would be really interested in is, how in the world did you get involved in creating presentations and pitch decks, largely for people in the real estate business? Like, how did that start?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. So the thing is, I started as I'm an industrial engineer by profession, right? So I was in the supply chain for 5 years and then realized that it's not my world. So because I wanted from a young age to, make cool and pretty and beautiful stuff, that's something visual, right? So I decided to shift into designs, and then I became a general graphic designer. So basically anything from Adobe to PowerPoint to Keynote, anything. But when I started to work with a guy that I think you guys are all familiar with, Dan Hanford, the founder of passiveinvesting.com, right? So he asked me to create an offering memorandum for him. I had no idea back then what offering memorandums are, or even what multifamily investing is all about, right? So I just did some tweaks on his deck, and he's pretty much amazed by the transformation of his slide. And so he kind of introduced me to some of his friends who are also his mentees during that time. And so that's when I started to learn that, hey, I think this is a great area for me to focus on. And lo and behold, everything's like coming my way. And this one, another great opportunity for me to help bring value to people who need it the most. So from there, I started to close down my niche, right? From generic presentations, like from law firm, from doctors, from engineers, academe, all those stuff, into just real estate. And that's how I found my way into being called the PowerPoint superhero for real estate collaterals.
And just for those of you that don't know, Kevin's actually located in the Philippines. So, he's number one in a different time zone, number two in a completely different country. Yet here he is impacting and adding so much value to real estate entrepreneurs and real estate companies, a lot of them, of course, here in the United States. But of course, he can work with any of our students, because I know we have students in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the UK, all over. And so it really doesn't matter, where you're located. At the end of the day, it's the presentation, the branding, the quality of your pitch deck that's going to be the door opener. So let me ask you, Kevin, when people come to you, like a good example would be Nitin Honda, who I just referred to you, who's now a client that you're working with. He sent his deck to me, right? And I, of course, was very, very constructive in terms of my critique. I'm sure he shared with you some of the things he commented on, but it was largely a pitch deck void of any pictures whatsoever. There were no pictures or photographs, a lot of written content. But like, what are some of the, what I call rookie mistakes that you see commonly made that like are a common theme amongst people when they come to you, so that the people that watch this presentation or that are part of it tonight can hopefully avoid some of those mistakes?
Yep, good question. Nitin, when he sent me your feedback, I totally agree with everything that you just said, with what you said. So a lot of the rookies, or the startup capital raisers that I meet, what they don't have in their deck or the presentation is a good. It's basically the three, or let's just focus on the two, right? Because I don't control the third one. So I'm not saying this. A pretty genius presentation designer by the name of Nancy Duarte mentioned about this one. So she pretty clearly much wants to tell to the whole world that there are three essential elements to a compelling presentation, whether that's a pitch deck or that's a classroom presentation or that's anything that you present to your audience, right? With a visual. So the first one is content, really. Her terminology is story, but for me, I call it content, right? Because it's content. So when we say content, it's usually the structure of what you're going to say to your audience. And for me, the best thing that you need to do in order to determine the solid content that you need to present to your audience is to be in the shoes of your, prospective investors, right? What do they need to know? What are the things that are boggling their mind? What are their biggest what's, hows, and whys, right? So when you have those questions, when you care enough about their questions, you would be structuring your talk or your presentation in a way that would answer their needs. First and foremost, they don't need to happen a Q&A with you, but you're giving them already this information that they need so that they can make the informed decisions by the end of your presentation. Now, the next one is visuals, right? I'm not saying this because I'm the PowerPoint guy and I make beautiful stuff. No, but this is, it sets some sort of psychology, right? Yep. Because in my email, I think you've read this, it's easier to trust beautiful things than ugly things, right? So you have to leverage that. You have to leverage that fact, right? Exactly, right? So you have to leverage beautiful things in order for you to be trusted, especially for startups. Mm-hmm. You've said it yourself during the introduction that the biggest power that anyone, especially the startup capital raisers, is to use branding, because it sets them apart from a lot of individuals who are also relentless in getting other people's money, right? So when we say branding, it's not just branding in terms of content too, like how you structure your words so that it would appeal, so that you would sound different to your audience, but also the visuals, like how you look. What does it feel when someone looks at your brand, your logo, your collateral, your website, your social media, all those stuff that you put in out there that people would see? What is the impression that you want? What is the emotion that you want them to incite, right? So a lot of the guys, the strongest brands that I've seen that are really like above the rest is especially those ones from the Army, the Navy, right? So they have like active duty, some sort of military terms in their name, and they really carry it out. Like the language that they use, it's coherent from their website to their pitch decks, to their presentations, to their social media, everything, especially the looks, it's related to the Army or the Navy. So I think that's one of the cool tricks that you can use. Mm-hmm. And the last one is the delivery. It's not my control, right? Because when people come to me, I give suggestions in terms of the structure, which slides comes first, which should be at the middle. Are they supposed to be split in two slides? Are they supposed to be compressed? And how should these slides look? All those things I have control, but the presentation, it definitely needs to be practiced or rehearsed by whoever's giving the presentation. And I noticed, because I don't only, provide service for my clients. I also jump on the call whenever they're doing the presentation. I noticed that the good guys, let's say the good big guys, what they do is they divvy up the presentation amongst themselves, right? Now, it depends because maybe you have like a two member team or 3-member team, but I think it's important to involve the other team members whenever you're doing a presentation so that they would see that, hey, these guys know what they talk about. And also it's easier for you to, delegate the question and answer portion.
Yep. Well said. I can't stress enough how important branding is. I'll give you a good example. Many years ago, I went to work as a consultant for a guy that used to be a big investment banker, worked at Lehman, and he's basically the person that created Einstein bagels. So if you've ever eaten a bagel at Einstein, my boy, Ramin Kamfar, was the founder and creator of Einstein bagels. And he sold that business to a private equity firm. And obviously with the money he made on the sale of Einstein, was able to start a real estate company, got into real estate and is just doing hugely well. One of his real estate investment trust is traded on the exchange. And today he's probably got a couple $2 billion in real estate all across the United States. But the name of his company is Blue Rock. And just, one day I just asked him, like, how did you come up with the name Blue Rock Real Estate Group? And he's like, it's real simple. Blue chip, rock solid. And I was like, wow, that's pretty great. And so when you're thinking about the brand and just even something as simple as the name of your company, give some thought to it, because a lot of businesses will create a tagline. You know what a tagline is, folks? Many of you probably do. It's like, here's the name of your business, and then there's a little tagline that resonates with your audience. And so as an example, many years ago, I was tasked with raising a couple $1 million for a company called Nautilus Homes. And their logo was a Nautilus shell, right? Cut in half, you see all the spirals of the shell. But then their tagline was homes designed around their owners. And I'm like, how cool is that? Because it's so visual that here you've got a Nautilus, right? We all know what snails do. They carry their homes on their backs. And so it was just a great message and a great brand that was real memorable. So now that we've talked about the 3 things that are important, basically delivery, the visuals, and then also the content, which is, of course, what I call the story. Zig Ziglar used to say, facts tell, stories sell. How important is it to create a story? Like, how do you work, Kevin, with the people that come to you to pull out that message or pull out that story that they're trying to communicate?
Yeah, great question too. So the thing is, I have some sort of a template, right? Like the common structure of what the big guys are doing in terms of capital raising, right? So title page, the team, the track record, and all those stuff. Now, I don't tell them what to say because I don't want them to sound robotic, right?
Yep.
So because the rookies, how they present is that, hey, we're gonna talk about the team, blah blah blah, and now I want to show you the track record. That's just completely inhumane, right? Well, then, if you compare it to something that, hey, this is blah 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 capital, and we wanted for you to be part of this community by investing in this deal. We've had some successes in the past, and these are our successes. We've had this solid and blah, blah, blah. And even if it's COVID, we have this thing. And when you invest in our company, my point is you should connect always to your main subject, right? So there's a main subject, which is to get them to invest with you. Now, you can talk about the how, the what, the why, but you have to always link them to the number one thing, the call to action, right? Which is to invest with us, because we're not just the greatest team, but we have the best deal, and we make sure that you're on top of everything that we're doing. Something to that effect, related really to branding, how you use your words to tell a story, not just talking about information, because people don't care about random information, but they want a story. You walk them through from this up to the climax and up to the ending.
Exactly. it's funny that you just shared that, because in some of our prior calls, I've created an analogy that says when you're raising capital, it's almost like you're the executive producer for a major motion picture, right? The teaser is the one pager. It's like the investment teaser, the one page investment summary sheet. It's not your pitch deck. It's basically to tease that investor. And then the presentation, that's like the film. That's like the major motion picture. Like you said, you have to build to the climax. We call it an inflection point. Some people call it FOMO, the fear of missing out on this great investment opportunity. And then after that, it's kind of like, anticlimactic. You tell them how to invest and what they're going to get once they invest, and yada, 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 and you put a nice little bow on it. So one question I have for you, because I see this all the time, is people will put together their presentation, Kevin, and usually they want to cover their financial projections, or they'll want to talk about like their prior performance. And there's a slide in there that basically has all these numbers, like a chart, like an Excel spreadsheet. And, when they put it up there on a screen, or when they're delivering it in a Zoom, it's like you need a magnifying glass, right? Because they've put like every line item, like for example, a financial spreadsheet that says, here's the income, here's the expenses, here's the net operating income, here's what we project you're going to get. And I largely communicate to people that, number one, it's very hard to see that because there's so many numbers up there. But also, number two, that at the end of the day, there's a much, much better way to communicate that visually, where you're able to take something that is largely maybe mathematic, or in this case, numbers, but communicate that and articulate that in a better fashion that really brings that to life. So when you look at presentations where somebody says, hey, here's my deck, and you're going through it, and you get to that section that has these ugly financial statements and these ugly prior performance charts in there, which are just all numbers in Excel spreadsheets where it's obvious they just cut and paste and popped it in there. How do you bring that to life? Or like, what are some of the things that you might coach or share with our audience on how they can do a better job in that portion of their pitch deck?
Yep. So it's ugly, right? You said it yourself. Financial section is ugly, and people that are not, technical or they just wanted the general thing, don't want to see those slides, right? But a thing that you can do, which is a strategy that we use at Kinetic Slides, is to really use the hierarchy, right? Like, what do you need your audience to see first, right? So for instance, if you're talking about a deal, and then if it's a deal specific, and then you've had your underwriting solid, and then you had your values for IRR and all the returns, all those stuff, or those numbers, you project them like 3-4 times bigger than the rest of the numbers in that particular deck, right? And maybe put them at a section or at a portion of your slide that is really striking, that people don't have to find it. So you have to also assist your audience on what to see first. Yep. And that's what we call hierarchy. So biggest number, IRR, right, in the percentage. And then if they need to see some of the details, then you have the table below, which is in smaller fonts.
Yep.
Something subdued.
I see what you're saying. It's kind of like, you can, I won't say mask out the rest of the page, but you can highlight maybe a different color or magnify the things that you're trying to call their attention to, because at the end of the day, it's largely driving their vision and what they see to the parts of the page that you want to stand out and really bring to the forefront as it relates to the message, so that it doesn't get lost amongst the rest of the page or the rest of the numbers. Yep.
Exactly.
Very so let's talk about what I call branding or commonality as it relates to consistency, business card, pitch deck, website. How important is that as it relates to building a world-class presentation?
Yeah, you can see that evidently to Remax, right? Whenever you go to an event, you'd see the red and the blue solid colors out there and the big ass Remax logo, right? When you go to an event and then you talk to a Remax guy, he would hand you this red or blue calling cards or business cards, right? When you go to your social media, you see these blue and red colors when you go to this website, right? Anywhere, even in Spotify, if they have a podcast, the visuals are in red and blue. Now, it's very important for you to be consistent and coherent all throughout the medium and every touch point that your possibly your prospect investors are looking you up to, even if it's Instagram or YouTube, anything, your ad, it has to be consistent so that by just the color, they would know that, hey, this is Capital School or this is URS Capital, this is Dan Hanford, right? It's easy for them. They don't have to go through the content to know that, hey, this I know this person, right? Because when you're constantly doing that, it's the same psychology as what the ads are doing, right? It's repetition. And even if you don't like the colors, even if it's yucky for you, you get used to it, kind of get accustomed to it. And then by the time that maybe on the 10th time that you're looking at it, you would be, investing more time. Yeah, this is interesting already, right?
Yep.
It's psychology.
Yep, exactly. So when you're structuring someone's presentation, is there a logical structure or like a flow that you find works best? Like, for example, a lot of people like to put a table of contents into their PowerPoint, which personally I just don't like. I just think it wastes time. It's like, but there's definitely, I think, a flow as it relates to here's who we are, here's what we do, here's why you should invest, and here's how you do it. So explain to me kind of that logical flow as you're taking what many people have brought to you and kind of rehashing it and re-delivering it to them so that people that are here can sit down and take a look at their presentation and maybe recognize one or two of the rookie mistakes that they may have made, so that if their presentation is not resonating with the audience they're taking it to, maybe it's not that the message is bad, maybe it's just that it's being delivered improperly because it's not in that proper sequence in terms of how it should flow. Does that make sense?
Yep. Okay. I think this is the portion where I can share my screen to show the best example or one of the strongest.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, but when it comes to the table of content, right? Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so you should be able to see the URS deck.
Yep.
Awesome. So this one, it doesn't have a table of content. Good question. But I advised URS Capital to still maintain that table of content. Why? Because there are some instances that they would be sending this out via email. So that's where the table of content or the agenda page is necessary. But when you're presenting, you don't have to do that. You're right. Okay, this is one of the solid in terms of content, right? Not necessarily visuals because they are much more better. Like obviously this one's better. But this one in terms of content, I think is the most solid, and they were able to raise funds, their necessary funds, 50 million in just 48 hours. So it was like mind blown, right?
Wow.
So yeah, URS, this one, they're based in New York. Right off the bat, they talk about the URS Capital, not so much text, just people don't care about a lot of text in the about section. What they want to know is how this investment opportunity could help them, right? So don't talk about yourself too much.
Yep.
They show this, yes, it has a lot of words, but they don't really speak about this thing and this sentence right here or this paragraph right here, right? Just maybe like 2 seconds or even 1 second of talking about this one. Now the track record is very important, but yeah, I understand that a lot of the startups in the capital raisings don't have this one, so you can skip. But if you do have, you can present it in a way that is tabular or something that looks like this.
There you
current
go. Yep.
Holdings, right? So it's very essential for you to not just talk about the story in just text or tables. Make use of visuals, right? It's very compelling if you use a lot of visuals. Now, the next one is once you talked about the track record, you can say, hey, so we've had successes in the past, right? But I wanted to specifically answer your question, why multifamily or why single family or why storage, right? You give them lots of statistics and data, like real data, right? That would talk about why this investment opportunity is the best or one of the best, right? Now, these guys, they have a lot of slides about multifamily. I don't agree that they have to do like 1, 2, 3,
Yep.
4, like 5, 6 different slides for multifamily. You can just maybe use 1 or 2 as long as these information are solid, right? It's not about the length of the presentation, but it's all about the storytelling, the content, and the delivery, the visuals. So you can see there's a lot of statistics in here too. Now, after that, they talked about the investment goals, right? Mm-hmm. So you have these bullets right here. It's very straightforward. The next one is they also talk about, this one is a very important slide. It's very clear that they are raising 50 million, right? And what are the, how do you say that? The fine prints, not even the fine prints. What are the other information? You have these ones, mm-hmm. right? Also, what are your criteria in terms of, or like, what are you looking to invest this money for, right? And what is your approach, right? Like it really answers the questions of the audience, the biggest hows and what's and the whys of the audience, the target returns. This one is pretty new. A lot of the guys that I work with in the past 2 years don't have this slide, except URS Capital. These talks about the current environment. Well, we have COVID, right? But this just gives them assurance that, hey, even if we have COVID, the market is still okay, right? Skyrocketing even if we have COVID, something to that effect. The opportunity, they talk about that. This one, the reason why I like how this structure is because they compared it to the rest of the different classes of real estate, right? So I think it's solid. You can see the apartment is way above the top. So no offense to the others out there who doing single family or storage or anything, right? What are their target assets? Now, this one's not deal specific, right? So they are talking about this thing. You don't have to put the target assets when you're talking about a deal specific, because when you're talking about deal specific, you know already if it's a core plus or a value add, right? Mm-hmm. What are your target market characteristics? How is the population looking? The macroeconomics. I think you don't need all these stuff, right? What URS does is that they hide these ones so that they would show them in case somebody from the audience asks, right? So they just have lots of bullets in their gun. So the market highlights a lot. Acquisition criteria, the structure, we could go on. And then this is where we become technical. We talk about the structure, the process, and I think a lot of these guys are repetitive. They also have an overview of what they just talked about before they delve into some sort of examples, right? What else? These ones are pretty repetitive structures. Yeah, these ones, the professional management team, they're partners, right? So they don't put the partners in at the beginning of the talk. Even the case studies, they just put it at the end because these ones are just supplementary, right? Like it depends on how your audience perceives you, right? Because there are sometimes that, hey, you pitch to them this idea and then they have lots of questions. And then there are some batches that, they are good with just a track record and the preliminary. So so my suggestion is that you have like 3 or 2 case studies and then have more as a backup if in case some members of your audience would ask. That's it. And they have also the timeline page. The only thing that I don't like about this thing is they don't have a clear call to action by the end of the talk. You see that this is a slide 47 already, right? It's a typical boring executive presentation. My personal take, which some of the marketers would also agree on, is you put something that is compelling, that's driving them action. What is it like? Invest with us. Place a soft commitment. It's a very good one, right? Or no more. And these ones are clickable. Even if it's a PDF, you can click on them and it would land you to a specific website. That's it.
It's a nicely done deck. You brought up a really good point And that is, there's a big difference when you're going to deliver your pitch deck to somebody either by email or actually print off a copy and send it in the mail, where that's very different than when you're in front of somebody in a Zoom, or maybe you're called in to pitch to a group of people where there's, maybe a small audience around a conference table, and you're going to be, using an LED projector and going through your deck. And the difference is, like Kevin said, you want to hide certain slides, because in reality, like I've said before, you want your presentation to really be no more than about 20 minutes, because, most investors have a very short attention span. Well, this presentation is 47 slides, and I guarantee if URS went through each and every slide in a formal presentation, realistically, you're looking at probably an hour. And so it's good to have the information in there so that if somebody asks a question, you can say, yeah, we actually have a couple of slides that address that. And you can go to them and then unhide them and share that portion of your deck then and only then, because it's basically in the content, which is very different. If you're going to mail somebody a package and it's actually being delivered to their residence or to their office, or if you're sending it as an email, that's a very different experience for that individual than actually having you in front of them talking about it. And so I really like what Kevin said, is that there are certain elements of the deck that you may want to hide, but still have in there as supporting content, so that when a question does come up, you can flip over and say, it's a great question. Let me share a couple of slides we have in the formal deck that I hid just basically to stay to our short agenda, but here you go. So that's really, really well done. Now, great job, beautiful presentation. So obviously here, you've got a lot of pictures, right? You've obviously got commonality in the brand in terms of the logo. And then, of course, in terms of kind of the look and feel. So this is the pitch deck. How does this then tie into either the offering memorandum, the website, the business card, the one pager, that really becomes part of that package that is then ultimately delivered to a potential investor? Because usually when you send an investor kit to an investor, there's what I call three pieces. There's this, there's the memorandum, and then there's usually a one-page investment summary or highlight sheet.
Cool. Awesome. I learned this from Dan Hanford, the guy that I was talking about. So what he does is he only sends out the one pager whenever he's got under contract, right? So the first thing that he sends out is the one pager. The objective is to get a hype or to tease the audience, or to even have a firsthand information who are interested in this deal, right? So whenever a person, let's say out of the 100, there are like 50 persons who wanted to know more about these data, that's the only time that he sends out the offering memorandum and the investment summary, because not everyone cares about what you send, right? Yep. Just give it to someone who cares, someone who's willing to listen, because these are your solid, these are your, the hot leads, right? So you wanted to make that funnel such that you just are talking about to a general audience at this stage, and then you wanted to trim it down to someone who's really, really hot, who are ready to invest their hard-earned money to your deal, right? And then from there, you do your presentation, you schedule a call with them, do a webinar, right? Record it to them, and then don't forget to follow up, because money is in the follow-up, right?
Exactly.
I know a lot of the guys are, they get discouraged because, hey, what am I doing wrong, right? You just need to repeatedly send out to them this email, or post it on your social media, Messenger, your My Day, Instagram, LinkedIn, right? You have lots of avenue. It has to be really visible to them, right? Because I have a guy like last week. He followed up, because I'm only not working for my clients. I also subscribe to the email list so that I would be updated to what's happening in their business. And then the third, right? So the first one is he was inviting about the webinar. The second one is a follow-up about this the status of the deal. Like we have like 48% of our subscription. We were subscribed 48%, right? And the next one is a good update that's saying, hey, we've exceeded our target capital for this round. So thank you so much to all who subscribe, blah, 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 right? Because it's really important to do the follow-up because people would tend also to forget that this deal existed.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, you have to create the urgency and get people to basically make a decision because indecision is one of those things that is definitely going to hold you back on your capital raise. I tell people, look, I'd rather have a no than a maybe. It's like, you know, a maybe is indecision. So if you're interested, then let's move forward and let's make a commitment. Let's get you subscribed and lock you in because I don't want you to call me back in 3 weeks and find out this entire investment has been sold out from underneath you. Then you'll have to wait for the next deal, which is fine. But if you really like what we're doing, let's get you locked in now because so many people are kind of in that indecision mode. And that's the mode that sucks when you're raising money. You either want, yes, I'm in, or no, I'm not. And, you know, I'd rather take a no over a maybe any time of the week. So let's open it up for some Q&A. Does anybody on the call tonight, Corey, Jaime, Jeremy, Alvin, have a question that they'd like to pose to Kevin? Well, you must have done a great job.
What do you charge for people to look over people's pitch decks?
Yeah, so I think Corey is asking about the price of our standard or our service, right? But it really depends on a lot of factors. The first one is if we need to help you out with the content, if we need to do some research, how long do we have, right? The urgency, because we only have like 4 designers in our team, and a lot of the times we are maxed out. We're working on lots of deals right now, especially capital raising, not just webinar presentation, but a lot of I don't know what's wrong with October, November, December, right? Like a lot of, it seems to be that there's a lot of people getting under contract during the burr months. Yeah. But to answer that,
tax season, they need to get the deal closed before the end of the year so that the tax benefits accrue to this year. That's largely the big push for a lot of these deals.
Oh, I see. Good. Thank you. Yeah. So Corey, to answer your question, I think the best one is for us to hop on a call and then discuss where you at and where you want to be so that I could also customize our services are offering to you.
Yeah, these guys do a great job. So how can people connect with you, Kevin, or maybe share your website and I'll put it here in the chat.
Cool. You can look me up at LinkedIn. That's Kevin Summerbang. Or also on Facebook. That's Kinetic Slides. And if you wanted to know more about my service, you can head out to kineticslides.com. That's right.
Great. Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Great information. The question from Jill, who's in Australia, is, do you only do real estate focused deals?
Yeah, majority. So the thing is, I've kind of put my name out there right in front of the real estate people, but I'm not closing my doors to my first loves. Let's say my first loves, like the medical, the lawyers, the academe, because a lot of the times before I've worked with lots of these guys, but it's just now that I realize that there's a big gap in the visual designs, the presentations that in the real estate market.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So yeah, I would definitely recommend Jill to reach out to Kevin, make that connection. I guarantee he'll be able to help you because I've seen a lot of the work he's done, not just real estate, but a lot of the other stuff. And, it's like he said before, when somebody gets your presentation, the very cover slide is going to be the one slide that largely determines whether they flip the page and look through the presentation. It's kind of like he said, beautiful presentation versus a quote crappy presentation, or ugly presentation, because that's your brand. That's like the compelling statement is right there on the cover page. That's going to hopefully get people to turn to the next page. Remember what I've spoken about in some of the prior accountability calls, the trust sequence, right? Well, what does the trust sequence start with? Number 1 is perception. that prospective investor is checking you out. Everything about you, from the business card to the website to your pitch deck, where in this case it's the PowerPoint, to the way you dress, if it's a personal meeting, to your website. It's the perception of how you come across in their mind. And this is one of the most powerful pieces of that package, which ultimately is your PowerPoint, because that's going to allow you to work through that trust sequence where now you're asking the questions to uncover the temptation. Then you're getting to that emotional connection that's made with the words you say, the presentation, the story that ultimately is hopefully going to get you across to the finish line, which is now you've got an investor and now you've got a business partner. So great job, Kevin. Wonderful to have you as a guest. Everybody here, if you need help, not just with your pitch deck, but even with your website, your brand, a logo, reach out to Kevin and just get some good constructive feedback on what you've created, what you need to create. And this guy has got a winning team. And so thank you so much for joining us tonight, my friend.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you so much, guys. I hope you had lots of values.
Thank you.